Welcome to a special Cadent podcast series on grief. Grief is a deeply personal experience, yet it's something that connects us all. Over the next 3 episodes, we will explore the complex and often misunderstood journey of grief, sharing real stories of loss, heartbreak, and healing. In each episode, we'll focus on different aspects of grief, sparked by real-life stories shared by the people at Cadent. These stories, shared anonymously by people who have lived through loss, will offer a window into the raw and powerful emotions that grief can evoke. But grief is not something that we need to face alone. Alongside these stories, we will be joined by experts from the National Bereavement Service and members of Cadent's Grief Awareness Committee, who will offer insights, support and guidance for navigating grief. So, join us as we listen, learn and share in this important conversation during Grief Awareness Week.
Hi and welcome to episode 2 of our 3-part podcast series on grief. My name is Anna Downs, co-chair of Cadent's Grief Awareness Committee. Within each episode, we're going to be sharing real-life stories shared with us by people from Cadent, voiced by our friends at Skube who are supporting the creation of this series. Let's take a listen to our story.
I feel that I am stuck after the death of my husband at the start of 2023. He had been in declining health since a cardiac arrest in 22, but also had for a long time been a negligent diabetic and was already an amputee and had had a triple heart bypass in previous years. And after his bypass operation, he began the slippery slope into renal failure. In late 2023, he had to have his right hand amputated, and following a poor recovery, it was also decided that in an attempt to save his left hand, he would undergo further surgery. Sadly, he developed sepsis, and after many months in hospital, he decided to stop all treatment. He was moved to a hospice where he died 4 days later. My anger is that despite him knowing about his diabetes, he did not take care of himself, and he's left me and our 2 sons. My guilt is that even though we all knew that despite all the medical treatment there was only ever going to be one outcome, I feel he decided to stop treatment to spare me the ongoing pain and trauma. I know in my heart he made the bravest decision that no one should ever have to make, and I love him for this, and I try to make this the loudest voice in my head, but in those wee small hours of the night, it's the guilt and the anger that overwhelms me.
So joining me for today's conversation are Zoe Hamilton-Wynne from the National Bereavement Service and Alison Wood, who's the Treasurer of the Grief Awareness Committee. So firstly, one of the things that I wanted to ask about was the feelings of guilt and why people might feel that when it comes to grief and how they can deal with that.
So I think the first thing to do is just to normalise those feelings of guilt and of anger. They are often very common and can be felt, extremely strong feelings of anger and extremely strong feelings of guilt. And that can be emotionally distressing. We can ask ourselves, what if, and have regrets about the things that we didn't say. We may just have these going around on repeat, and that can haunt us. So I think the first thing is just to actually say that when you're feeling angry or you're feeling guilty, you're not alone in that feeling. And it's extremely raw. This is also very recent as well, I would say. It's very recent. And often that second year can be harder because with the first year you had the support maybe that you receive from family and friends and so on, and sometimes, not in all cases, but that support can sort of die away and you've gone through those first anniversaries and sort of expected to get on with it and to cope with it and so on, and actually still left with this incredibly recent experience. And I guess the only other thing that I would say is that if the extreme emotions of guilt and of anger become very pervasive and they don't dissipate and there's no other emotions, and maybe there's an inability to actually spend some time doing practical tasks and so on, and actually you feel very locked into that, there is additional support out there. So professional help, going to see your GP, asking for counselling support, talking therapies can be incredibly helpful. Work through and tease out exactly what might be behind that anger, what might be behind that guilt, if you feel like you're not moving on past it.
And then something else that we were thinking about was, what are some of the little things that people can do to kind of help with isolation when it comes to losing a partner? I know, Alison, we've spoken about this when you lost your husband, Rex, haven't we?
We did, yeah. I think for me, I found coming home after being out was a difficult time because the house was so quiet and so empty. So I started leaving the radio on, or, leaving some sort of noise going in the background, so that when you walk into the house, there is just some noise,
Yeah.
and it's not just silent. And that helped me. I also have a friend who's just recently lost her husband, and she said exactly the same thing, that she struggled when going into the house. So I suggested her to leave a radio on, and she has found that a great help. So, it is just the little things that you can do that help, I found.
Yeah.
And when it comes to support, if it happens sort of unexpectedly and suddenly, Zoe, and you find yourself in this position, what advice would you give?
I think that if it's sudden, if it's unexpected, often our best sort of source of support is our friends and family. If you've got a strong network around you, they can be what you need. Of course, there are organisations available. We provide support ourselves at the National Bereavement Service, and we also can signpost to many different organisations. And there are a lot of organisations that have been set up for specific types of death, for example, or specific people, so such as widowed and young, for example. So there are many organisations out there. There are also many organisations that are local as well. So often our peer support, people who've been through the same things.
Yeah.
They are it can be an incredibly important support network.
And then, I guess, becoming single again when you've lost your significant other. So becoming single again, how do you navigate those conversations to save yourself from having to tell people the same story and go through the trauma?
I think for me, it was good that a lot of the friends and family were there. I think even at the funeral, they sort of know what happened and things like that. So I think sometimes it's just reminding people that these are things that are difficult to talk about, but you find your true friends, if you know what I mean, that the ones that are there for you, the ones that understand. Your family know what, because they're probably going through something with you.
Yeah.
So I think it's finding those people that you can trust and speak to. But I think also for me as well, like with work with Cadent, I mean, the support that you can get through your colleagues and through the things that Cadent offer. I mean, if there's the counselling sessions if you need them, but it's all those sort of things.
I guess it's not being afraid to kind of reach out, isn't it, and ask for that
Absolutely.
help. There's no shame and saying I'm struggling.
Shame in saying you're struggling and reaching out for help. And also, one of the things that I think it's important to mention is that for those of us who have supportive families, we're really lucky.
Yeah.
And not everybody does have a supportive family, and fractured relationships and estrangements can often become even more fractured following the death. And there can often be, disagreements. And so we do have quite a lot of people who will get in touch because they have difficulty in their family relationships. So, friends can be family, can't they? Colleagues can be family. You're actually reaching out to your family is who it needs to be.
I think that's where our committee comes in as well, don't you think?
Yeah.
That if people are like that and they don't know who to talk to, that they know that within Cadent there is our community,
Yeah.
and that we can be there just as the listening ear.
Yeah. And then, so something that we don't always think about, I guess, necessarily so much is there's so many things going from a partnership and two people sort of juggling a household to go into one person that you don't necessarily always think of. What are some of the challenges that you've seen in your experience, so from your work?
So I think one of the things that we do is we concentrate on the primary loss of that person who's died, and actually the fact that they are no longer in our lives. But then, as you say, we look at those secondary losses. Is the person who died the person who did the childcare and picked the kids up from school, or was the driver, or who looked after finances, who paid the energy bills, who took the bins out? How have the roles changed, and actually, what is somebody suddenly having to do that they weren't having to do before? And when you're looking, often Legal will contact us and they say, my friend or my family member is going through this and I really want to help and I don't know how to. What can I do? Actually, those practical tasks and setting up that support network of, okay, well, I'm going to help and I'm going to pick up the children and I'm going to offer my driving services and I'm going to mow the lawn, and dividing up those practical jobs can be an immense support and really important.
Can I just say that within today's day and age, and how everything is digital, online and everything else, that when my husband passed, my biggest struggle was getting into accounts and things like that with passwords.
Yeah.
Because, he had passwords for all sorts of things, and trying to sort out getting into accounts and stuff like that I necessarily haven't used, because he dealt with it, is trying, make a note of passwords that you both use either way, so that if anything does happen in the, that what they are.
And those little things, they are so frustrating and so stressful, and you don't have the emotional capacity to deal with those frustrations. So actually helping yourselves in advance and creating that list of all your logins and your energy providers, it can reduce so much stress and anxiety.
And also find out where your fuse box is.
Was that one for you, Alice?
That was one for me, yes.
And your gas and your water.
Yes. The gas was fine. I knew where that was. But the fuse box, a light bulb went upstairs and it blew the fuse, and I hadn't got a clue. So I was searching the house looking for the fuse box. I did find it. It was under the stairs. But that is something definitely to think about.
Yeah.
That you perhaps wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you don't want to be, it's having those conversations, isn't it? Because you don't want to talk about these things that are inevitably going to happen, but ultimately by not, then it puts a incredible sense of burden on your significant other, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And I think the thing is, you don't always think it's going to happen, do you? You don't know it's going to happen. So you do tend to get into these roles of these jobs that he does, you do, whatever. But it is useful, even not thinking, it could be long term you're thinking, but know these things.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this podcast series for grief. We hope that the stories shared, along with the insights from our experts at the National Bereavement Service, have provided you with a better understanding and a sense of connection. If you or someone you know is struggling with grief, we encourage you to visit the National Bereavement Service website for resources, advice, and other ways to connect. You can also reach out to the grief awareness community through our Viva Engage. Thank you for listening.